I would love to introduce everyone to Jill Bennett, CEO of the Utah Nonprofits Association.
Good morning, everyone. We could not be happier to see you here today. One of the things that we're working really diligently toward is making sure that our benefits bring you and your teammates real change and real opportunities for personal and organizational growth. And today that topic happens to be retirement planning in a 401k. Some of you might know that in a former life, I was a financial advisor. So I am very well equipped with how important this investment in your time is, because no one, even me, wants to work forever. And it's really important to be able to provide your team with the resources that they need so that they don't have to work forever as well. We have some other opportunities for you to engage with UNA. Our conference is coming up. That's another way you can invest in your team. If you've got questions about that, we'd be delighted to answer them. We've got some wonderful events planned so that we can be together face to face. And we look forward to seeing you any way, any shape, and at any event that we have. It's now my deep pleasure to welcome our newest member benefit, the folks from Elevate 401k, and they're here to answer all your questions and give you some information about retirement planning and the retirement plan for UNA. Thanks again for being here. And next up, Elevate 401k.
Thanks, Jill. That's my first official introduction on a Zoom meeting, so I'm feeling pretty important. That's great. I just want to start by introduction. We are going to mention what Elevate is here in a minute, but my name's Jerry El-Bakri. I've been in the retirement plan advice space for about 22 years. Then I have significant experience working with small employers and organizations and large businesses as well to help them determine the best offering that they can have for their employee base. And so we've literally served hundreds of businesses and organizations and thousands of participants. And so I want to bring that expertise and experience to bear for Utah nonprofits. And I just want to also at this point say thanks to UNA for all their hard work getting this off the ground. It's actually been kind of a dream of mine since a new law passed, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, to be able to help this specific group of people. And especially I want to thank Brandy, who's been there for us on every turn and is so super organized and energetic and just really concentrated on helping everybody that's a nonprofit in Utah to be successful. So we're really looking forward to this partnership as well. Just to get started, as we started this process, we actually interviewed several nonprofits.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
So we did several interviews of people as we created a white paper that you'll be seeing get posted and probably get out to you about how nonprofits think about their benefits. And it was focused on all benefits, and the 401k or retirement plan benefit was just one of the things that we talked about. But what stood out was the fact that your missions are so important to you, so whether it was mentoring youth and changing futures at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Utah, or it was providing treatment for women and mothers with substance use disorders at the House of Hope, or eliminating animal shelter euthanization nationwide by 2025 at Best Friends. All of these missions really came forward to us as being so important to you and so important to recruiting and retaining your employees. So we started to think about retirement plans in terms of how can a retirement plan support your mission? And I think that's really the question that you have to ask yourself. And of course, the answer is, I've got some statistics here at the bottom. The number one cause of workplace stress are financial issues. And 58% of people in the United States feel like they're living paycheck to paycheck. 72% of Americans report feeling stressed about money. These are not new. You know that if people are feeling stressed about these things at work, they are not as good at helping you fulfill your mission. And so, we look forward and hope that this solution can help you provide a retirement plan to your people. While we're thinking about missions, it probably makes sense to talk about our mission. So at Elevate 401k, we started the company and we've been focused on one thing, and that's participants. And that the big question we ask ourselves, how can we help more people get ready for retirement? How can we help them create financial independence? And as it turns out, it's a pretty hard problem to solve, just like all of your problems that all of you guys are trying to solve. It's not easy, and there's a lot of intricate things that go on, but what we're going to talk about today will definitely help, especially in the nonprofit space. So first thing I want to talk about is, this is a very busy slide. I made it this way so that when we create a PDF of this and send it out to everybody, you guys will have some details in there. But the one thing I just sort of want to say is not everybody has to offer a 401k or a 403b, but I think every organization should think about how they're going to help their employees save for retirement. The Department of Labor says that a person is 13 times more likely to save for retirement if they're offered a plan at work. I think back to my own family and watching my parents who are now in their, my dad, I think, is in his late 80s, very late 80s. And I look at their, how did they go about saving in their time? And they were small business and entrepreneurs, didn't always have a plan that they offered. And in fact, it led to them really not saving what they needed to save. And that's probably the fundamental driver for why I do what I do, is seeing that. As we all know, nobody ever says, I wish I would have started saving later, right? Everybody wants to say and has said, geez, I wish I would have started saving earlier. Well, to do that, that first job they go to needs to have a plan in place. And of course, it's never too late to start saving. And so let's just touch on some of the other things that you might think about. What if a 401k is not right? And I just want to touch on sort of the 5 biggest choices that your organization might make. The first one could be, hey, we don't really need a plan at all. We only have a few people. They're all savers, 1 or 2 or 3 of us. We're just going to let everybody open their own IRAs. And you can see on the slide here, that can be Roth or traditional. You can save between $6,000 and $7,000 depending on your age. It's not an employer-sponsored plan, so it's just something that that's going to be right for the organization that has very few people and they're all interested in saving and all savvy enough to set it up. On the right-hand side, solo Ks, or sometimes called uni Ks. This is only right if there's just one employee or of the organization, or if the only other employees are family members of that employee. And so that's really a special case. It does allow for higher contributions, but pretty rare, only right for that particular group. And then we get into simple IRAs. This is very common in the nonprofit space. So it's in a simple IRA. It is an employer sponsored retirement plan. And it has higher limits than regular IRAs. You can contribute between $14,000 and $17,000 depending on your age. If you're 50 or older, you can do $17,000. It has a required employer contribution of 100% match up to 3%. So if an employee puts in 3%, you match it with 3%. It has quite a few limitations when compared to 401k or 403b. It doesn't allow for Roth, doesn't allow for loans. It's limited in its portability, meaning if someone leaves, being able to roll it over to their next employer's plan is difficult. But it is pretty low cost. And really one stipulation to think about is it's only for organizations that have fewer than 100 employees. Now, I'm going to go a step further than that and say that even though the rule is for fewer than 100 employees, we typically see simple IRAs in organizations that have probably less than 20 employees. You rarely see it really in organizations that are bigger than that. And that's probably just from a recruit and retain standpoint in terms of bigger employers and their employees sort of had an expectation of 401k or 403b. At the bottom of the pencil is SEP IRA. So a SEP IRA, or it's also called, the SEP stands for self-employed pension, is a special type of retirement plan where only the employer can contribute. So this is not a plan that encourages your employees to save any of their own money. It's a plan where the organization makes a contribution. And there are several rules. I'm not going to dive into all of them, but I think the most important thing to understand is that in a SEP IRA, whatever contribution you give to one individual, you have to give that same contribution to everyone. So, everybody gets 10% of their pay or 5% of their pay or whatever the number is. They all open their own account somewhere. It is an employer-sponsored plan, but it doesn't have some of the administration hassles that 401k and 403b have. The limits in how much you can contribute is actually 25% of the compensation of the employee. So it can be a really big contribution, all the way up to about, I think it's $67,000, $61,500 for this year. So again, special situation. The simple is much more common with nonprofit organizations. And that leaves us to the 401k, 403b space. And I'm going to focus on 401k. 403bs and 401ks in the nonprofit space used to have a lot more differentiation than they do now. Today, if you make an employer contribution to your 403b, so some kind of a match or profit sharing or non-elective contribution, it all of a sudden looks very much like a 401k. And so we see overwhelmingly that nonprofits that make those kinds of contributions are looking at 401k. And so since our program today is 401k based, that's what I'm really going to focus on. I think it is interesting that there are laws out there right now trying to create the same sort of pooled employer plan that we have for 403b. So we'll be excited to watch those. But the contribution limits in a 401k are quite a bit higher, 20,500, 27,000 if you're 50 or older. You can do Roth or traditional contributions. You can have loans. It's much more portable than a simple IRA is. Your contributions as an employer are very flexible compared to, so you think about a simple, you have to have that dollar for dollar match up to 3% or a 2% contribution to everyone. In the 401k, it's much more flexible and can be designed around the needs of your organization, but possibly have a little bit higher costs. And I'm going to jump into why people, why doesn't everybody have a 401k if it's so easy? Before I do that though, let me just touch on a few of the pros and cons of each of these. And actually, I'm going to let this slide kind of go for us a little bit. And this will be something you can look at when you get the PDF, but because I think I touched on most of the items that are in there. Why not a 401k? Why doesn't everybody have one? Sounds like a no-brainer. We got higher limits, tax breaks, etc. So I think there's really 5 reasons, and I want to touch on all of those. The first is fiduciary risk. A 401k is considered a type of a qualified retirement plan, and it's covered by many of the rules and laws associated with a law called ERISA, E-R-I-S-A, Employee Retirement Income Security Act, which was passed in the mid-late 70s and is still in force today as very strong and important law. And those rules sometimes are a little bit hard to follow. One of the things is that somebody acts as a fiduciary for the plan. That means that they're going to set up and administer the plan and act in the best interest of participants. And that sounds great. You guys are nonprofit organizations. You love people and animals and all things good and flowers and everything. You would never do anything wrong. The hard part with being a fiduciary is it's really easy to make a mistake because there's so many rules. And so I wrote under there, someone serves as a trustee and fiduciary, or a group of people do. So there's a little bit of risk there. They even sell insurance for that, fiduciary insurance, that if you have a plan now, you probably already have, to try to indemnify those individuals a little bit. The second thing is hard dollar administration costs. So these types of plans can be expensive for both the employer and the employee. It's especially received kind of a bad rap over the last 5 or 10 years, I would say, in terms of administrative fees for employees. And it can vary widely. We compare costs of 401ks, from existing plans to proposed plans all the time. And I'll just say that it's not out of the ordinary to see one provider charge 40 to 70% less than another. There's a very wide variety. This really stems from the way 401ks came about. At first, insurance companies were really the only people capable of record keeping or administering a 401k. And they had group annuity contracts and other sorts of structured platforms that allowed them to charge high fees. And so some of those things still exist. Since then, a lot's changed. Mutual funds started being able to do it. And then independent record keepers came about, software as a service, which is the way Elevate 401k does it. But those changes, the costs have been a problem for people. Hassle and staff workload. So if you offer a 401k plan, you're going to have some people working on it, especially if you don't use a pooled employer plan like the UNA plan that we're going to talk about. There are disclosures that have to be given out periodically to participants. There are documents to be prepared and filed. For instance, each plan has to prepare and file a tax form called a 5500. The plan document is a trust document that you have to get made, and then that has to be maintained. It gets restated all the time by the IRS, and these restatements are required to be made to your document. And people make transactions, they roll balances into the plan and out of the plan. They want to take loans. This goes on, and what it ends up creating is some workload for your staff. And for small businesses, that's something that they want to try to avoid. For bigger plans, if your plan's over 100 employees or 100 eligible participants, then you may be required to have an audit on your 5500. And guess what? Audits are expensive. So you get a CPA firm that audits the 5500 and makes that report. In Utah, that's probably going to run around 6,500 to 8,000, depending on your size, maybe up to $12,000 to have that audit done. So again, a lot more expense. And then the final one is employee apathy. We know they need to save for retirement, but sometimes people don't take advantage of this benefit, and it becomes very frustrating for an organization. So those are the reasons people don't have a 401k. And so I just want to say, UNA pooled employer plan to the rescue, because what's happened is that recently a law was passed that created a new type of plan called a pooled employer plan. And once that happened, I remember distinctly seeing that. It was the end of 2019 and thinking, wow, this is the solution for Utah nonprofits, because it can help all of those problems. First of all, saving time in the pooled employer plan, as you're about to learn. The responsibilities for most of those plan sponsor duties are taken off your hands. Fiduciary risk is virtually eliminated. The fees are low cost and transparent. You have access to, great investment options. In fact, I put the fee structure right on there. $2,000 per year per adopting employer, $60 per participant per year, and 0.45% of your balance. And that actually ranges between 0.35 and 0.45, depending on the size of your plan, but very transparent, low cost. And then in the bottom left, great education. So I think you're going to be really excited about the things that we can do to help engage your employees that maybe you haven't seen before. So what happened is at the end of 2019, law called the Secure Act, which stood for Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement. I don't know how they come up with those things, but the Secure Act was passed. And part of that rule created pooled employer plans. So prior to this, unrelated organizations could not pool their assets together for the purposes of getting a better deal, better providers, better investment choices, and less risk. It wasn't allowed. You had to have something called employment nexus. So, sort of like a sister company maybe could do it, but you couldn't just pool it together. Then this law was passed and opened up the door. One of the parts of one of the requirements to have a pooled employer plan is that somebody has to serve as the pooled plan provider. In your case, that's Elevate 401k. And so they've actually registered with the Department of Labor to be a pooled plan provider for this plan. That means that they take most of that administrative responsibility off of your plate. So box 1 says they maintain the plan document. They administer all those transactions, like people that want to take loans or are moving from, rolling over, all that kind of stuff. They're responsible for the disclosures, creating and disseminating those disclosures, all of the compliance testing, all that stuff's on there. In fact, they sign and file the Form 5500. There's only one Form 5500 for the whole pooled employer plan. So as an adopting employer, a participating employer, you don't have to do that, which also means you don't have the audit, right? If it happens to be that your organization has more than 100 eligible employees. So that's probably the big news right there, is that these pooled plan providers take a lot of those duties off of your plate. I just want to say here too, that Elevate 401k also functions as the record keeper for the plan. The record keeper is very important to 401k. And most of the time we think of them as just the company that provides the internet access, right? Maybe you had a plan in the past and Fidelity was your record keeper. So you'd log on to the Fidelity website to make any changes you want. Maybe it was John Hancock or Mutual of America or whatever. In our case, it's Elevate 401k. And so, yes, they do provide internet access and they create the statements. But the biggest thing a record keeper does for you, or the two biggest, in my opinion, one is that they track the money types. So in a 401k plan, you might have some pre-tax contributions and some Roth contributions, employer match. There might be other types of employer contributions, like a non-elective contribution. You might have some money in there that came from a rollover from a previous employer. That right there's 5 different types of money, and all the growth on those money, on those accounts, they're all tracked separately, so that at any time these sources, because they have different tax consequences and different abilities to move the money around. So the record keeping software is taking care of all of that, tracking those money types. The next big thing they do that people don't think about is placing the trades every payroll. So imagine I've decided to put in, 5% of my pay, and it's $120. Every 2 weeks, we send $120 in, and I've chosen 3 or 4 different funds. Somebody's got to place all those trades and get all those shares and everything in my account and account for that, and do it without a lot of extra fees, or any, in our case, extra fees other than the fee structure we showed. So that's what the record keeper does, and Elevate plays a very important role. The plan also has a professional investment fiduciary. It's retirement plan consultants. I won't dive in too much here, but the goal of the investment fiduciary for the plan is to manage the investment lineup. So when your employees log into the system, they see a variety of investment choices. Some of them are higher risk, some of them are lower risk, some of them are target date funds, etc. And managing that list and trying to ensure that the lowest cost, best performing, lowest volatility options available are in there. And so, of course, we don't have a crystal ball, but we use a very systematic approach to trying to make that the case. And then participant education. So I could have just put the first little emoji thing up there, hard work, because what I've learned over the last 20 years is to make your plan work takes a lot of hard work from everybody involved to help educate participants. And we have a really exciting program. 2 slides from now I'm going to tell you about, but we have proprietary tools, including a book that we can give to people, and on audiobook. We obviously can do web meetings and videos. We one-on-one meetings. We have lots of resources. And then the last thing I'll talk about is being metrics based. So each one of your organizations is going to have something different that we want to focus on. Maybe people are saving money, but not enough to get the full match. So we want to focus on that. Or maybe we're just not getting anybody under the age of 35 to participate. So we could focus on that. Or maybe the people over 55 are saving a lot of money, but they would like more education about other retirement savings options, or Social Security and Medicare and stuff. So the participant education thing is all about customizing it for each organization and having a metric that you can hold us to make sure we're performing. Just to give you a feel for the investment options that are in the plan, we have investment options from all of these companies. I'm sure you recognize them. Many of them are the biggest providers of retirement plan options. I would focus on the Fidelity one just a little. So inside a 401k plan, most participants end up using something called a target date fund. A target date fund is when, instead of building our own portfolio mix, we just tell the record keeper, hey, we're going to retire about the year 2035. Okay, I'm 53, so I'm going to hit retirement age about the year 2035. And we say, so we go into a target date fund called the Fidelity Freedom Index 2035 target date fund. And then Fidelity makes the mix for me. Bracken's like 2055. Brandy's like 2065 because she's only 18. So anyway, Fidelity makes that mix. The further someone is from retirement, the more aggressive that mix is. The closer they get to retirement, the more conservative it is. If you have a plan, I'm sure you have target date funds, but I thought I would just stress that ours come from Fidelity, and they're very low cost. They're a special type of a share called an institutional premium share, and those are only 0.08%. So very common. In terms of education, one of the questions we asked when we did interviews was, do you offer a financial wellness program? And I guess I should have thought of that to get the poll ready, because I'd love to see if the people here who does. But this is becoming really important to for-profit and non-for-profit organizations when they realize all these problems related to stress and money. And they also realize the 401k is not the solve-all solution. It's a great arrow in the quiver, but we have a lot of other things to teach people about, like budgeting, saving in an emergency account, so the education surrounding the purchase of a home, the best way to use insurance, calculating your net worth. All of these items are part of a program called Truist Momentum. I would encourage anybody out there to Google Truist Momentum. Truist Momentum is kind of like, the way I describe it, it's a finance 101 class, like an incoming freshman finance class at college. It has 8 chapters that are referred to as the 8 pillars of financial greatness. And they cover things like managing consumer debt and all these sorts of features. I'm a certified presenter of Truist Momentum. And anybody that's a participant in the UNA pooled employer plan, any adopting organization will have access to this program, and we will roll it out full board to your people. It has an internet tool where people can get more education. They get free credit monitoring. They get access to My Money Desktop, which is a really high-end investment planning, budgeting tool, etc. All that's included in this. There's no extra cost. Those types of programs would be costly, for you or especially a small organization, probably wouldn't even consider using something like this. But even for larger organizations, really expensive to roll these types of programs out. And you've got one included with this at no cost. So what now? This is what I broke it into 2 things. If you don't currently offer a plan, and if you currently have a plan. So this is our don't offer a plan slide. So what should you do? Well, for starters, at the end here, Brandy's going to send out a form that people can, you can put your information in if you want us to get back to you. Everybody can also pick up their phone right now and scan the QR code that's right on your screen. Just point your phone at it. It's going to pull up my calendar. So you can book an appointment directly on my calendar that's convenient for you just by scanning that barcode. It'll book it directly on my calendar. The default is Zoom meeting. If you want to do something different, you can get in touch with me, and we're happy to help you do that. So what would we cover in a meeting like this? First of all, there's no cost, obviously, for a consultation. One of the agreements we had to make, UNA wants this partnership to benefit everybody, not just the people that end up joining the plan. And so this is the way we do that. We don't care if you join the plan or not. There's not going to be a fee for a consultation. And we're going to help you decide which type of plan is the best for you. IRA, simple IRA, SEP IRA, 401k, all that stuff. Help you decide which one the best. We've done 5, 6 of these so far. I think in 3 of those 5, we've recommended something different than the 401k. So I want everyone to know that we're always going to do what's in your best interest and help you understand that. If the 401k turns out to be a better choice, then we can help you with think about what match might look like, evaluate the costs associated with offering a plan, and try to help you set things up and get things going. What if you have a plan now? What should you do? So again, you can schedule, just scan that QR code and book a time directly on my calendar. What we're going to do here, though, that I think is really important is I think there's 3 things that an appointment with us can do for you if you currently have a plan. The first one is we can help you evaluate whether your current plan choice is right. So maybe you already have a simple IRA and you're now wondering, I wonder if that's the right thing for us because we'd like to do some things that are different. Or maybe, whatever, you have a, solo K and you're hiring someone or whatever the case is, or you already have a 401k. In that case, we're going to talk about plan design features. And we can do a lot of good here, even if you don't switch to the pooled employer plan. I'm going to be able to give you ideas about how you might change your match or tweak it here or there to get more participation or add features like auto enrollment, etc. Again, no fee for these consultations. The third one is that we can help you compare your fees and the services you're currently receiving with the fees and the services inside the pooled employer plan. Why is this important? Because you're probably a fiduciary or someone at your organization is a fiduciary. And one of the basic fiduciary duties is to understand the fees that are paid by the plan and the services that are received for those fees. And, going out periodically and getting a third party to compare those and help you with those is basic proof that you're taking your financial duties seriously. So if nothing else, that's the reason to reach out to us if you currently have a plan. And again, best advice, we want to help you do what's best for your participants in your organization. And I want you to know that you can count on that from us. So that's really me plowing through it with everybody on mute. I see there's quite a few chats and so forth. So Brandy, can I turn the time back to you? Maybe you can help me know what questions have been asked. And to everyone else, if you have any questions, I think we got through that in about the time that we planned on it so that we could have lots of questions. I'm happy to answer any.
Absolutely, Jerry. First, I'm putting into the chat again. It is time to enter your information for a chance to win a catered lunch for your team or an Apple Watch. The link is in the chat. If you would like to learn more, please click that link. We will be closing this form here shortly. We're actually announcing the winners at the end of our time together. So don't delay, get your name in there today. So now we're going to open it up for some time to ask some questions. These can be specific to your nonprofit. These can be pretty much anything under the sun. We have a whole team of experts here with Elevate 401k. So is there anyone who's got some questions, who maybe wants to open it up and kick it off for us? You can unmute yourself. You can put it directly into the chat. I am very comfortable reading a chat for anybody who's maybe like, I just don't want to have my voice heard this morning. Much respect. I understand completely.
I'm going to answer one question, Brandy, that I see inside the chat to start us off, and hopefully that'll get people opened up. The question came in, how are highly compensated employees evaluated? So Bracken answered it briefly, but I think there might be another layer to that question that was asked. And so when we do 401k plans for for-profit organizations and for not-for-profit organizations, we have to compare the contribution rates of highly paid employees with those of non-highly paid employees. If it's a for-profit organization, we also have to include owners and owner family members, whether or not they're paid a lot. And that limit gets changed by the IRS all the time. So for 2022, it's actually 135,000 a year. They raised it a little bit. Meaning if I earn 135 in 2022, I'll be considered highly compensated for 2023. Bracken's answer is correct in the sense that if I earned 130 in 2021, I'm considered highly compensated for 2022. If your organization has individuals that fit in that category, it's really important that you get your plan design correct. There are certain types of features you can add to your plan, wherein these mathematical tests that compare contributions between highly compensated and other employees are deemed to have passed. And so it keeps people from needing to reduce their contributions if they're higher paid. So happy to talk through that with anyone. And I guess the last piece to that question might be, each individual organization inside the pooled employer plan is tested separately for this comparison between highly paid and non-highly paid. Some people wonder if that happens on some kind of plan level.
We are getting a few questions, Jerry. I'm going to take us up to the top of these. Are there minimum and maximum numbers of employees for participation?
Great question. The answer to that is no, there's not. So there might be a minimum number of employees for this to make sense, right? If there's just one, the solo K is cheaper and allows you to make the same kinds of contributions, for instance. If you have 5 or 6 or 7, and if those employees are okay without making Roth contributions and making smaller contributions, a simple IRA might make more sense than this because of the $2,000 a year employer fee. So the answer is there are no minimums or maximums, but what might make sense for your organization, there might, there could be essentially a minimum in terms of what makes sense, and we'll try to help direct you to whatever the best solution is. In terms of maximum, definitely not. We have the same pooled employer plan design for for-profit organizations, and we have, I think, an 800 or 7 or 8 or 900 employee organization in there. So definitely no maximum on that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. The next question is from Jana. When picking the meeting length, I think this is for the consultation with your team. What is the best option for the meeting length for that initial consultation?
I think 30 minutes is the best one. 15 is a little short. You can book it longer if you want, but most of the time that first thing takes about 20 to 30 minutes.
Okay. And from Heidi, we just switched from a simple IRA to a 401k with ADP. With the pooled plan, is it potentially lower costs for us to switch to the Elevate plan?
The answer is yes, it is. We do end up comparing a lot with ADP because they're a very common provider. And the answer really will depend on the number of participants, I think, that you have in your plan, and we're happy to step you through that. But a large number of participants, I think there is a significant and high probability that the costs will be lower inside the UNA plan. With really fewer participants, maybe not. So that's what we can help you check it. We're very familiar with ADP's platform, and it's a good platform, by the way, just so everybody knows. I don't want to sound like I'm talking it down at all. It's open architecture, meaning you can have access to great investment options. And so it's the type of platform that you want to have. Yeah.
Well, we're wondering, can you please put up the cost fee slide again?
I can. In fact, I can do better than that. If I stop sharing for a second, is that okay?
Of
Randy?
course, yeah. So while Jerry gets that set up, I'm going to do a last call to be entered into the prize drawing. You have until 10:44 to get your name into that prize drawing. Jerry, it's all yours now. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just getting this page. So we can send this out. Well,
I'll also make sure that this is included in the PowerPoint PDF that I'll be sending out to everyone as well.
yeah, thanks for that. Sorry, I got us off track here trying to get fancy with not sharing and making this happen, and then I think I am just going to have to go back to that slide. The let's see, you guys are seeing this, I hope. Well, I lost it. To that, whoever that person is, I'm sorry, but I lost my ability here to figure this out. So I will get it back up. The fee structure, just so everybody knows, I can tell you it's really easy. And then we have a document that we've created that we'll share with everyone, but it's $2,000 per participating employer per year. That's typically paid, or is paid by the organization, and $60 per participant per year that can be paid by the organization or the participants, or it can be split. And then 0.35% to 0.45% of the plan balance, depending on the size and amount of assets that you have in the plan. So that's the structure. That pays all the fees. That's record keeping, compliance administration. That's the investment advisory piece, all the education, everything that we had in there. So sorry, Elizabeth, I stiffed you on the cost fee slide, but we'll get it to you.
I am, thank you, Jerry. I appreciate that. Russ, here is the link. Last call. Once my clock says 10:45, I'm closing the form, and then you guys get to see a fun random name prize drawing. Before we get to that, any last questions? Before we do the prize drawing, I am going to close or stop the recording. So Cody, it's all yours.
Yeah, hi. I had a quick question. I was kind of curious to, for my own edification, how does an employer-sponsored retirement plan, if the employee leaves the organization, what is the employee's options for how that account is transferred and or managed?
So the same options that you would have in any 401k plan, which are really, there's 4 options. When a person separates from service, they could choose to cash out their 401k. We hope they don't do that, right? If they're under age 59 and a half, that has a 10% tax penalty. They can move it to their next employer's plan. So we call that a 401k rollover. They can move it to an IRA, so they can open an individual retirement account someplace, any place, at their bank, at TD Ameritrade, whatever they want, and move it into there. Or they can leave it in the plan. So that's one sometimes people don't realize, but if your balance is over $5,000 and you leave any 401k anywhere, including ours, you can leave your balance in that plan. It's going to continue to grow and be invested. It's not going to get contributions. So, it won't continue to grow that way, but those are your 4 options when you leave. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
I might just add, what happens if an organization joins the pooled employer plan and then wants to leave the pooled employer plan, like the whole organization? I mean, if I were in your shoes, I think I'd want to know that. We do not have a termination fee for when you leave. And so that's unique. It's not our goal. Our goal is to keep you by providing great service, not by having some hurdle to leave. And so what you would do is, if you were dissolving your plan altogether, you could do that. Or if you were picking a new provider, like let's say you wanted to go to ADP instead of from ADP, like we were just talking about, you would work with ADP and you would work with Elevate 401k, and those assets would get merged in. And that process is not super difficult. Obviously we have to keep all the rules. There's a notice that people have to get when that change is happening, etc. But it's not impossible. Sometimes people might think, geez, once I'm in this pooled employer plan, like after that, what do I do? I saw somebody asked about the code, and
It looks like Jennifer's already stepped in. From Lainey, we have, can you explain again the difference between the 401k versus 403b plans?
Yes, that's a little bit of a long answer. I'll give you the short version and then happy to talk individually. So 403b plans are special retirement plans only offered to 501c3 organizations. Prior to 2006, 403bs had some significant advantages, such that if you were a 501c3 organization, offering a 401k instead of a 403b was extremely rare. Almost nobody would have done it. Some of those allowed, for instance, you didn't have to do this comparison between highly compensated and non-highly compensated. And so you could have all kinds of different employer contributions to different levels of employees. You didn't have to file 5500s. There were a lot of things that protected you from different parts of the ERISA. Then that law changed, and in that process, one of the big things that changed was if you had an employer contribution to a 403B. So if you started off, if you had a match, or you had what we call profit sharing, it's hard to say that to nonprofit organizations, but that just means we're going to give everybody 3% of their pay. We're not going to require them to put anything in. If you had those types of contributions, all of a sudden you were subject to these rules, and you had to have 5500s, and you had to do this testing, and you had to do a lot of that stuff. And so there are still 403B there are still situations where 403B might make more sense. If you don't have an employer contribution, if you're a church, there's church versions of plans. Government, there's something called the government 403B. So sometimes you see that in certain organizations that are kind of quasi-governmental. So there are some reasons to still have it. But if you have an employer contribution, the answer to Lainey's question is there's almost no difference anymore. 401k, technically for-profit, 403B is only available to nonprofits. But today, you'll see a nonprofit offer, and at least this is my opinion, nonprofits offer 401k over 403B, 4 to 1, 5 to 1, something like that, because they're planning on making employer contributions. And often they can get lower cost services and so forth in 401k.
Thank you. Any last questions?
Hi everyone. This is Andy from Park City Community Foundation. I've got one. This is 60,000 foot level question. Is there any possibility, or are there laws surrounding doing something of this nature, but with benefits and not retirement?
I can let Brandy answer. You mean in terms of like some kind of a UNA pooled healthcare plan? Yeah, you guys actually have a great partner right now.
I do believe we have them in the room with us today.
Yeah, I did see them.
Oh, are they here?
Yes, sir, they are. So UNA, we do have a group health insurance plan that our members are able to participate in. We primarily partner with Beehive Insurance, and Joni and Todd can unmute themselves at any time and be like, whoa, Brandy, whoa. The biggest thing there that I talk with our members about is that you do need to have 2 full-time employees on the plan to be able to adopt it. Todd, Joni, anything you would like to add?
While we're waiting for them, I'll just tell you that they do a great job, Andy. I wholeheartedly support and recommend Beehive. They, like us, in my opinion, are out for your best interest and serve the small plan community, very well. And I know they've had tremendous success in the nonprofit with your nonprofit plan. So.
Yeah. Hi, Andy. This is Joni over here with Beehive. And if you would like, I can reach out and we can answer some of your additional questions after the Zoom call if you would like. But yeah, we offer a full benefit package through the nonprofit association. So yeah, we can address any of those needs for you.
Fantastic. Yeah, let's connect after this meeting.
Okay, I'll grab your email address and from the participant list.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We're hearing here from Jana actually as well. We have greatly appreciated Beehive's help with our health insurance benefits. Always helpful and responsive. Hear, hear. Any last questions? Well, thank you all. Please stick around. We will be doing our prize drawing next.